the global consciousness comes when we talk about the SOC and the ACT, which is what we're going to talk about when we come back after we get off the break here. And then one person wanted to know, I noticed an increase in the use of earthquake metaphor in reference to the stock market last October. How do you know if your linguistics are metaphorical or literal?
We usually know because the linguistics present a sharp context that is quite literal. So if the earthquake was literal, we would find references to rocks or substrates or destroyed trees or downed buildings. If it's metaphoric, we would see the other things: shake, fear, fleeing, without any real specifics to any rubble, if you will. Make sense?
It does. Absolutely perfect sense. And this was just a question for you, Clif. You mentioned that you were searching for a bucket of crystals to do an experiment. Have you located the crystals, and how are the experiments?
Yeah, I've located the crystals, had some guys that make the little tiny crystals that go in watches and stuff and are timing all of this stuff, piezoelectric crystals. And we've had an absolutely phenomenal, I don't know if you want to say intuitive bit of luck there, but if you form a particular form of a magnetic field that's based on 12 magnets that form this, ultimately form this triangular field in the middle, and you pass it through or over the crystals, you can indeed excite an electric field within those crystals. We don't know if it'll be better for storage or better for generation, but it does seem to show us enough promise to continue on it.
Wow, I really want to hear more about that. That's too cool. We'll have to bring you back on and talk about that, and as well as
and of course we're doing those because we can look far enough ahead to see what will be effective in the new electrics.
Yeah.
And in the new electrics, one of the key things is there's going to be a new way to store electricity. And it may be that somebody smarter than myself figures a way to shove all kinds of electricity into a crystal and then leach it out slowly, which would be très cool, you know.
I love it. I love it. This exciting time, scary and exciting at the same time. One of the things that we talked, that your Alter report talks about as well, besides the SOCs and the ACT, which we're going to talk about that, is, what was it that was in the report? See, I'm trying to think of the language that was in there, but basically it was about the effects of some energy, an alien energy, or...
Well, we have the unknown energies from space.
So let me ask you a question, and
sure.
I may be way off base here, but you know, NASA's got this really brilliant plan of going to the moon and blowing it up, or at least parts of it. Yeah. And you know, I had a guest on last weekend, and you know, he said, well, maybe there's a reason for it because, you know, it really is not a planet. We all know that it's not a planet. It's hollow. It doesn't rotate.
Which is just bizarre. The fact that it doesn't rotate and it is it's the oddest thing in the universe. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. It doesn't fit. It, you know, it's like, you know, that piece of the puzzle never fit. He's saying that maybe that somebody else has taken over the ship and that they're trying to take the moon away, of course, which would have catastrophic effects here on the Earth.
I don't know if anybody's trying to steer it away or anything, but it strikes me as very odd that NASA's going to try and use a kinetic weapon projectile in that particular area.
Yeah.
And it actually fits within the early phase of what we've talked about as the contact meme that ultimately goes to alien wars in the year 2011.
Right.
So we get to this particular issue. For instance, right now we have the image of a projectile, a kinetic weapon, and this language relative to the moon, and so we have the war component in space in mainstream press, and that is building in the language that will ultimately become the alien wars. So is it a sign right now that they're involved in an active war with somebody on the moon? Could be. And it could be that this is how they leak this out to us, and over the course of the next couple of years, the context in which this little tiny bit of information is being introduced will gradually broaden so that we see it within a much larger framework. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And
so we may actually be seeing the early change here that we had forecast that would lead us into the open discussion of the alien wars in late 2010 through 2011.
Yeah, see, that's what tripped me up when I was reading the article when it came out a few weeks ago about them doing that, and I was like, well, you know, we're starting a war with extraterrestrial beings or whatever, But yet, here's our country denying the presence of them. Hello?
Yes, I know.
I'm thinking,
and they're throwing that projectile curiously close to what many in the European Space Agency community have identified as a functioning fusion reactor in a city around it.
Yeah.
That's on the North Pole side there.
Yeah. Crazy.
So no, nothing fits, and all the denials
Yeah.
pretty much are anytime they deny anything now, you can take it as a sure sign that it is as you think it is, and not as what they are saying.
Yes, which is one of the things that caused people to wake up when they really, really realize when all this stuff is starting to come out.
And it's terrible.
It is.
I feel bad for him, having gone there, having been through that,
Yep.
unwinding this huge pile of yarn to
Yes.
discover at the middle that everything is a lie up to this point is just staggering.
It is, and it's just like everything that we have ever known has always been based on untruths.
Correct.
Untruths, and unfortunately, we all have allowed for those untruths to some extent. And the ones that are not allowing for it anymore, then there's more and more that's going to be on the bandwagon with that, which does bring the whole point to the civil unrest and all the other things that are going to be happening.
Right.
But, this is a cleansing, too, of humanity, that we no longer give our power away. We are sovereign human beings, and the powers...
And it's difficult work. I mean, we have
is.
to acknowledge that. It's not an easy path to say that you're alone in universe and you stand here and you're willing to take what it throws at you and persist and persevere.
That's right. Exactly.
But once you do take that power back, it's like, hey, never going to give it away.
That's right. That's what I like about it.
Yeah, and it does make for some interesting humans out and about.
Ha! Yeah.
And actually, it's this very subject, the idea of the knowledge that is at that core of the act thing, the collective of the feminine, which, curiously, I was actually going to name the Council of Grandmothers initially,
Yes.
but it seems to be intergenerational, so I had to broaden it. But there's going to be the act deal is like a giant super self-organizing collective, and
Yes.
and I don't want to think that I don't want to use certain words because I've had experiences of these words that are in a sense negative because I hate meetings. But if you were to use the word feminist collective, you might get the idea of people sitting around arguing about various different kinds of points, and that's not what the data seems to suggest. It seems curiously that it's a very harmonious collective that is essentially feminine in nature, and perhaps to the extent of being exclusionary to the testosterone crowd among us, insofar as the upper regions of it. It appears to be embracing, but to a certain extent saying, well, okay, you men have really screwed it up, and we're not going to let you do it again. And it is on a global scale. I mean, we see participation elements that suggest the Inuit tribes will be involved, as well as people in Finland. Huge participation from Siberia, almost a leadership role there. And other areas about the Earth that are going to get together and basically start laying down the law.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an interesting piece of the data to come across in a number of different ways, especially in the linguistics level and the sums involved. It's what we call a fracturing item, and that is to say that it actually causes a large schism to occur within our model space, within the powers that be entity. And it appears that this it's in essence the thin edge of the wedge that splits the powers that be irretrievably into smaller and smaller subsets until it just disappears over time. But this what we call the Aquarian collective or consciousness tribe, and we could have called it just another collective because it's a giant self-organizing collective, but it's going to have a long-term impact on the planet, and it's going to be very, very, very hated. I mean, detested beyond our ability to put into adequate words by the patriarchy, and especially by the Pope and the imams of Islam. And it threatens their entire power structure in both cases, so much so that all kinds of death threats will be rumbling out of both.
Right. And that's the thing that, forewarned is forearmed, right?
Correct, yes.
And so that in itself is totally fascinating, because I started reading on the Circle of Grandmothers or whatever it was, and I found that to be rather interesting. And then all of a sudden now the whole premise of the feminine, it has been literally in the past few months, seems to be cropping up everywhere.
Doesn't it, though?
Yeah,
yes.
Just everywhere. It's like, so your linguistics are now catching up with the actuality of what's actually happening. So it's a very cool thing in that sense.
Yeah, we actually really kind of like sitting here and running the little software and seeing how close we are, and is this one going to get fulfilled or not that one? And we waste a lot of time speculating about it. It is cool though.
Yeah, well, some of that can be kind of fun to speculate about, because when you get past some of the terrible negatives there, it's a real positive, because it does bring, I think, some balance that this Earth has needed for eons of time. And that gets us to some of the whistleblowers coming up and all the truth coming out.
Right.
And here's an interesting thing. Years and years ago, about 10, 15 years ago, I had this vision where I was literally looking at the Earth, and it was spinning around. And as I was looking at it, there would be these little hot spots, and I would go in and hone in on them. And all I kept hearing was, these are undiscovered history. Going to find lots and lots of undiscovered history. So what has shown up here in the last 4 or 5 days all over the internet is all these new tombs that they're finding and sites that they're finding all over the world of undiscovered history.
A good temporal marker. Yeah, what's officially called out-of-place artifacts.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That goes along with your report, so I thought maybe you could broaden that a little bit for everyone.
Well, it's part of a larger theme which has been going on for a number of years called Secrets Revealed. And the Secrets Revealed meme basically is a combination of the breakdown, if you will, of the tight control of all of the information sources that rule academia and public media and influence all of our perception of reality. So, for instance, it's anytime you go to any of the, it really irritates me, and I don't watch these things, but you go to like the History Channel or any of these other shows, and they say, modern man, Homo sapiens sapiens, arose 100,000 years ago and developed his brain 40,000 years ago.
Yada, yada,
no, that isn't it, And those kind of factual errors are going to disappear fairly rapidly. It's going to cause a lot of problems with the various subsets of the powers that be that supply all of those media, because they're going to be thrown into absolute chaos as all of the real facts start coming out. But as part of a broader meme that not only includes the finally people will come out and say, yeah, look what we dug up 30 years ago and we haven't been able to talk about, right? There'll be all of that kind of undiscovered history that's been buried again. Mm-hmm. But there's also the other aspect of it, of the Secrets Revealed, which is on the other side. And all of this is tied into the death of the dollar. As the dollar dies, all these people that have been paid to be quiet for so long through academic tenure and so on are going to be released in free and scrambling to make a living, and they're just going to start spilling their guts any way they can, trying to make a dollar out of it or make a living out of it. And it's going to start snowballing. And that death of the dollar is going to affect not only the suppressed academic community, but also the black ops groups, because a lot of those companies that supply them are going to go belly up in this huge wave of bankruptcy and unemployment, and lots of people are going to come out and say, I don't have a job now, and I've been paid this nice money to go and work in a hole in the ground all these years, but hey, I know about all the hole in the ground stuff. Maybe someone would pay me to know about that. And so we're going to see a large number of people come out with those kind of secrets revealed, which, of course, starts to change our entire global perspective and so on, and it builds back into these collectives that start forming. And as the more lies come on out and we realize there's more lies, we go rooting around for more truth, we find it and find more lies and so on, and it just keeps building all the way up through 2011, and where it all kind of culminates in what we call the alien wars.
Interesting.
And it's not nice. I mean, there's going to be elements of it that'll be quite fascinating to, especially to data junkies like myself, but and especially along the lines of the suppressed technologies. That I think is going to be absolutely fascinating. But
yeah, and that's really that's where I'm excited about, is all those things that have been kept hidden as far as the technology is concerned.
And that we think is going to be the part and parcel of the powering of the new electrics. And we actually think, though, that, the math within the linguistic sets is such that I believe that even if the powers that be were able to exist for 1,000 more years and clamp down on all the secrets they already know, they've already lost, so to speak, because there's already a large enough mass of tinkerers out there exploring some of these ideas, and then we get in that we'll get into a positive feedback loop that can no longer be stopped. And our data actually supports this idea and furthers it by saying specifically what they're going to do is they're going to start piggybacking off of each other's work in this almost contest-like atmosphere, this frenzy.